Hey everybody, this is Todd with Industrial Comfort. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make one of these, what I call ladder spline box corner joints. It's a great way to really dress up the corner of your boxes if you don't mind putting in a little extra effort. Let me show you how I did it. We're going to get this project started using a box spline jig that I made in an earlier video, and I put a link in the description so that you can follow along to make one of these for yourself. Now, for this particular project, I've got my sample corner here, and what we're going to do is start by making traditional box spline joints. And in order to identify the location of each of these splines, what you effectively do is take the width of the wood and divide it by the number of splines that you want plus 1. So in this case, I'm looking for 6 splines. This is 3 7/16 inch wide, so I'm going to divide 3 7/16 by 7, which is going to give me a 1/2 inch. That is the space between each one of the splines on center, so that I know once I have this in the jig, that's the increment that I'm going to move the fence along the way. Now, before I make the first cut, I highly recommend that you put your fence on either an even number or at the 1/2 inch mark. That way you can very easily move down by 1/2 inch gradations. Now, 1/2 inch just happens to be what I'm using for this piece of wood. So what I'm going to do is, in this case I mark it at the 6 inch line. I'm going to do a pass through with the corner out of the jig. This is going to give me my reference line. I'm then going to take this corner and line it up to the edge of the cut line that we make. Then I'm going to move the fence over by a 1/2 inch, make the first cut, move over by a 1/2 inch, make the second cut, and so on and so forth until I have 6 cuts in this board. What I'm then going to do is cut to another video segment that I made in the last video showing you how to cut the splines. I made a whole bunch of extra splines, so I'm not going to go ahead and make it in this video, but I'll cut to the other video, then I'll cut back, we'll glue the splines in, and I'll show you how to make the ladder styles in the next step. Okay, we've got the first cut made, and as you can see here, we've got our reference point now. In the previous step, I made a mistake. You don't want to line the leading edge up with the edge of the cut. You want to align the leading edge to the center of the cut so that you'll have an on-center cut when you move your fence over by the appropriate number of gradations. Now, before we start making our cuts, we want to make sure that the blade height is set appropriately. Now, you never want to cut all the way through the joint, or you're going to end up with a mess on the inside of your corners. So generally, go as high as you'd like. Again, just make sure that you don't cut through the joint. All right, now I'm going to clamp to the center point. I'm just going to eyeball this. And we're ready to make our cuts. Okay, and here are the cuts for the splines. Now I'm going to cut to the other video, show you how I'm going to make the spline material, and then we'll start the glue up. Now cutting the splines is really straightforward. What I'm going to do is take this block of purple heartwood, which I'm using for my X's, and I am going to line it up so that it's a little bit over the edge of the blade. I'm going to run it through in what I'm calling a sacrificial cut. That way I'll know that the edge of the wood exactly meets the edge of the inside of this blade. So in order to get the appropriate thickness for the spline, I need it to match the kerf of the blade, or the width of the blade. So what I'm going to do is take the kerf, which is 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to double it. That way I can account for the material that's going to be removed by the blade itself. So that's 1/4 of an inch after we make the sacrificial cut. All right, with all this spline material now cut, I'm just gonna glue it into place. If this wasn't a test joint, I'd probably take a little more care in my glue up, but I'm okay getting sort of glue all over the place. We'll clean this up during the sanding process. All right, now we will let this dry, and we'll come back and we'll finish it up. All right, the glue is dried on these splines, so I'm going to use the bandsaw here just to knock off some of the extra material. Then we'll take it over and sand it down before we move on to the next step. I'm going to remove the remainder of material here with some 80 grit sandpaper. I'm not going to go any higher on the grit because I'm going to have to do sanding again once I put the inlays in on both sides during the next step. Now what I'm going to do is take my speed square and I am going to draw a line that cuts across the base of the lowest one of these splines. And I'm going to use this as a reference point when I then bring it over to the table saw, and I'll do the same on this side. Yeah, honey. With the lines now drawn at the base of these splines here, I'm simply going to align it on the table saw here such that the blade creates a cut right in the middle of that line. Now, the blade height doesn't need to be any more than about 1/8 of an inch. Now, in some cases, I don't know if you can see here, the bottoms of the splines don't quite meet the line here. So in cases like that, you just want to make sure that the blade is a little off center from the center of this line to ensure that it's going to make contact with those splines. and this is the outcome that we're looking for. I'll repeat the procedure on the other side. For the next step, I'm going to cut the spline material using the same procedure that I used in the earlier step that I showed you from a previous video. I'm not going to film it here because it'll be repetitive, but once I get those strips, we'll go ahead back to the table and glue these in place. With the new splines cut, I'm going to apply the glue and put them in place. All right. And we'll let this set up. Okay, same as before. We're going to cut off the excess wood. We'll sand it up, and then we'll be done. The final step, and always my favorite step, is getting the oil coat on and watching that color really come to life. So with a little bit of effort, you can create a really cool, what I call ladder box spline joint. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.